My name is Julia-Maycie Bedingfield, and for my ACER project, I decided to do food access and quality. Food security is defined as the assured ability to acquire nutritionally adequate and safe food in a socially acceptable manner, meeting the cultural needs of the individual. Food insecurity occurs as a consequence of limited resources and access to food, therefore resulting in malnutrition. Over the last 25 years, there has been considerable progress in increasing global food production to combat food insecurity. However, as of 2020, there are still around 795 million people experiencing food insecurity. There are numerous nutritional and physical health issues associated with food insecurity, such as weight abnormalities, anemia, hindered development, diabetes, hypertension, asthma, and cancer. Food insecurity also greatly affects one's mental health, causing psychological distress due to one's inability to maintain and acquire sufficient food resources. Mental health issues associated with food insecurity include anxiety and depression. So these are the levels of food security. Typically, there are about 4 levels. So starting from the top and working towards the bottom, there's high food security, which includes households that do not have problems or anxiety about consistently accessing adequate food. And then you move down to marginal food security if you're in a household that has had problems or anxiety at times about accessing adequate food, but the quality, variety, and quantity of their food was not substantially reduced. Then you move down to low food security, which includes households reduced the quality, variety, and desirability of their diets, but the quantity of food intake and normal eating patterns were not substantially disrupted. So an example of a low food security level would be individuals who buy unhealthy food in comparison to healthy produce because they think it's cheaper and easier rather than buying healthy produce. And then moving down again to very low food security would be individuals who at times during the year eating patterns of one or more household members were disrupted and food intake reduced because the household lacked money or other resources for food. When considering food insecurity in Alabama as a whole, according to the Alabama State Department of Public Health, Alabama is the 5th poorest state in the nation. This causes 17% of adults to struggle with food insecurity and about 23% of children to struggle with food insecurity, which would be about 1 out of 4 children. Alabama food access resources include End Child Hunger in Alabama, Alabama Women, Infants, and Children Program, which is the WIC program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, Double Up Food Box, and Break for a Plate Alabama. And this is just several Alabama food access resources that they have, but of course on the website they have more. A local organization that provides food resources to individuals struggling with food insecurity is Feeding Gulf Coast, which is a Feeding America affiliated food bank that serves 24 counties in South Alabama, South Mississippi, and the Florida Panhandle. This organization's main branch resides in Theodore, Alabama, which is here locally in Mobile County. This organization first started in 1981 and has been working towards a hunger-free Gulf Coast over the last 40 years. Their mission is to provide nutritious food to meet the challenge of feeding people who are hungry as a result of systemic poverty, personal crisis, or disaster. The flow of food begins with food being donated from various national donors, the USDA, local retail partners, farmers, and community food drivers. Food is then inspected for safety, sorted, and packed into boxes to be distributed amongst Feeding the Gulf Coast networking organizations. Volunteers then move boxes to transportation agencies and food bank partners for distribution. Lastly, when food boxes are transported to areas of need, local volunteers distribute food to local community members in need. So this is just a local community organization that can help with food insecurity here in the Mobile area. So it's really important to have organizations like this in our local areas. When considering the needs assessment for this health issue, We're going to start with going over the purpose for this needs assessment. So that would be to improve community members' overall well-being by increasing food access and quality within the community. Overall well-being encompasses 3 different components of health, which are physical, mental, and emotional health. The priority population for this needs assessment would be individuals in lower socioeconomic statuses who are lacking food security. My data collection for this needs assessment included in-person observations and interviews, and I utilized my internship at Victory Health Partners for my in-person observations. Victory Health Partners is a nonprofit organization located here in Mobile, which serves community members aged 19 to 65 who are uninsured. For this reason, a large majority of our patients fall lower in the socioeconomic class. Many patients do not eat nutritionally balanced diets and are often referred to our facility's dietitian in order to create a healthier nutrition plan. We also recently started a healthy living program where we give out questionnaires to every patient to see if they qualify for monthly food boxes that we supply at Victory Health. These food boxes are used to combat particular chronic diseases. For example, if an individual were to have hypertension or diabetes, then they would qualify for a food box, and in their food box they would be supplied with healthy foods to combat that disease, as well as a health nutrition planning program for meals. I also utilized interviews for asking community members their thoughts on healthy eating and food access and quality within the community. For data analysis, the first need to be prioritized would be ensuring community members have access to safe and quality food if they are unable to provide it for themselves. Another need that I discovered from my data collection would be how important it is for individuals to have health education, because in some cases, individuals, when they do find the means or resources to get food, they can oftentimes pick unhealthy choices rather than healthy ones because they don't know how important it is to eat healthy. And oftentimes, unhealthy foods are also a lot cheaper and more easily accessible than healthier foods. I believe this need is extremely changeable with the help of the community, and also think that we can utilize organizations such as Victory Health Partners to reach local community members. Risk factors associated with food access and quality include depression, stress, and anxiety, which are 3 of the main health risks associated with socioeconomic disparities. Social isolation or alienation is also common in relation to socioeconomic disparities, and all of these health risks can oftentimes lead to other health issues in relation to food insecurity, as previously mentioned. The main program focus will be improved access or resources and influence behavioral changes through health education. I believe a large part of combating food insecurity has to do with providing community members with easier and better access to healthier food, but it's also important to educate people on the importance of eating healthy as well, in order to show them how to do so in order to facilitate those behavioral changes. The last step in a needs assessment is to validate the prioritized needs, or essentially decide if the health issue needs to be addressed. I would say that this need definitely needs to be addressed because improvement has been done over the last several years. However, there is still a large percentage of the population that struggles with food insecurity to this day. For my intervention for food access and quality, I decided to do community gardening because I believe it can greatly benefit the food access and quality of individuals within a community. Community gardening can improve physical, mental, and emotional health in a variety of ways. For physical health, individuals who engage in healthier eating are supplying their body with better nutrients, therefore allowing them to feel healthier and increasing their energy levels. People who get involved actively with volunteering at the community garden can also be getting physical activity with gardening activities. And also, if the community garden were to be built or located in the middle of a more urban community, it would allow individuals to be able to walk to the community garden and get them exercise rather than driving to a grocery store for their groceries. Mental health is improved because researchers have found gardening to help reduce depression, anxiety, and stress in individuals, all of which help to reduce their chance of secondary diseases associated with hindered mental health. Mental health is really important because oftentimes decreased mental health can lead to physical health decreases and also your emotional health as well. They are all interchangeable. Lastly, emotional health is improved by giving residents in the area more of a community feel with engagement involved in community gardening. Social interaction is extremely important when considering the overall health of an individual. Researchers have found individuals who struggle with food insecurity tend to feel isolated and alienated from the community. Therefore, engaging in a local community garden could help to alleviate some of those feelings. Basically, the main goal of a community garden is it helps to give people good access to quality foods. So obviously in a garden you grow healthy produce, and when you go to a grocery store you see the produce, but oftentimes people don't buy it. So if you were to engage in a community garden, most of the time the only thing that you're able to get is healthy produce. Therefore, it would greatly increase individuals' physical health by supplying them with healthier eating, and then it also follows with physical health for activity, mental health, and emotional health. So the community garden that I hope to gain service learning from was the South Alabama Community Garden, and it's also known as the Food Bayou. However, I was unable to do so because they never reached back out to me about volunteering with them. I also am not sure if it's technically gardening season right now because it's so hot in Mobile, and also school is technically out because it's the summer, so I just feel like they weren't reaching out to people. But I really like the setup of this community garden, so I still wanted to include it in my presentation. So this community garden engages students, staff, and community members through education workshops, community outreach, and research. This garden utilizes organic growing techniques without the use of synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. This garden first started in the spring of 2015 and it is located behind the JAG Transportation Center by the intramural fields. They grow a variety of vegetables, herbs, and fruit trees, all produce grown are donated to the Salvation Army on a weekly basis, and then students, faculty, and community volunteers are also given some of the produce that they grow. So the community garden and food recycling recovery programs also work hand in hand, which is kind of neat. And this is one of the main reasons that I wanted to talk about this community garden and why I wanted to volunteer with them, is because they work with the food recovery program and the recycling program at South to try to prevent waste of food within the South community. So basically, the food recovery program is part of a national movement to decrease the amount of food wasted and divert food to those in need. So volunteers and staff take leftover food from 4 different dining areas, which are the Einstein Bagel Brothers, located in the Allied Health Building, the Student Center, Humanities Building, in Java City, and Fresh Food Company. They then deliver the food to Mobile Salvation Army, and the food waste is given to food recycling program. Since 2015, volunteers have collected around 40 pounds of wasted food a week. So essentially, that food isn't wasted since we're giving it back out to the community. So basically, they'll see if the food is still edible or not, and if it is, they'll donate it. And then food that's wasted, so like thrown out, then we'll collect it, and then it can then be used for food recycling program. So the food recycling program then works to divert the food waste from the university's solid waste system and landfill, which can then be composted and used as nutrient-rich soil for community gardening. And this is really important because having nutrient-rich soil grows better produce and also keeps the garden better. So basically, in Alabama, the dirt is kind of like really hard. My dad, he kind of took up gardening for a while, and it was really hard to get a good garden because the soil is not that great. So having a food recycling program where you get healthy, nutrient-rich compost, it's like really good for the garden. But this is like one of the main reasons that I wanted to go over this community garden, because they are recycling food, which is really important when we're trying to prevent food insecurity, because food that's wasted, it's kind of just going against the main idea behind preventing food insecurity. But I still went to the community garden because I wanted to just show you guys where it was located. Even though I couldn't volunteer there, I wanted to see how it was set up because I really liked the idea behind it. So basically on the left side, you see the community garden entrance, and the area around the garden, it's kind of overgrown, but it is located behind the JAG train transportation building. And it's a gated little community garden, so that was nice. And then you enter the gates, and basically you see a bunch of different little plots for different things that they're growing, and then you see like their little gardening shed in the back there, and they do have water hose systems set up out there. I don't think that people have been there recently, so as I said previously, I feel like just because the summer, I don't think that they're really gardening right now. But I wanted to also show you guys that there are some vegetables that are growing. So on the left side, you see a tomato plot, and tomatoes are growing. And then on the right side, it's a cucumber plot. You can see one of the cucumbers is growing. And then, as mentioned earlier, they do grow herbs here and fruit trees. I did not know they grew fruit trees, but I also have never seen a fruit tree in person, so I'm not sure what it looks like without fruit on it. So I didn't see any of those, but I do think that's really interesting. They grow fruits too. And then for my service learning, I did it at Victory Health Partners health screening. So basically, since I couldn't do the community garden for my service learning, I wanted to find the prioritized population just to get kind of some hands-on experience with them. So I interned with Victory Health Partners, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a nonprofit for individuals who are uninsured from the ages of 19 to 65. And they did a health screening at the Piggly Wiggly. It was the grand opening of the Manning Inc. I think it's Manning Corporation. He's opened his 14th Piggly Wiggly, so we were at the grand opening for that. And basically it's in the Sims community in West Mobile, which is kind of in a low socioeconomic area. So I figured going to this health screening, I'd be able to get some hands-on an in-person experience with individuals within that community. And I was able to kind of ask them some questions about just their health and like healthy eating. So it was kind of beneficial for my project as a whole. But the health screening consisted of taking blood pressure, temperatures, and blood glucose. So blood pressure, obviously, it is good for detecting whether or not someone has hypertension, which is high blood pressure, which is a risk factor for several different diseases, actually. And then blood glucose, obviously, if you have abnormal blood glucose levels, then it's shows that you could potentially have diabetes. And then with COVID, it's always important to have your temperature taken. But we did this health screening on June 15th of this year, and I stayed, I think, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So for the service learning reflection, one strength would be the fact that this organization landed a really great partnership with Piggly Wiggly, because they're now advertising Victory Health Partners at all 14 locations, which will help with advertising the organization as a whole. So I'm not sure if I mentioned already, but we did partner with Piggly Wiggly, which is really important because we're going to be able to have the Victory Health Partners information pamphlets set up at each register, and they're going to be able to give those to customers in order to further broaden Victory Health Partners. And a lot of patients that come into Victory Health Partners don't know that it exists, so it's really important to spread the word out about them. And they are growing, and they're trying to get another building, so if they get more patients in, they might get more donations since it is a nonprofit. Another strength would be the priority population was reached based on the location of the store, which was in Sims, Alabama, which is in West Mobile. But if you go to Sims, Alabama, this particular area, you can tell it's lower socioeconomic status, and also just from the customers that were in the store, you could also kind of tell. And Since this community is on the lower socioeconomic status, we were able to attract potential patients for the organization because oftentimes people in lower socioeconomic statuses do not have health insurance. So that was good for the health screening because they reached their targeted population. I think one of the weaknesses with this health screening was that the organization did not advertise their new healthy living program, which has to do with healthier eating choices and the promotion of physical activity. I believe it would have been a perfect opportunity to introduce the healthy living packets because people were shopping at a grocery store. Therefore, we had the potential to influence their food purchases, but we didn't. And I also feel like it would have been a really good advertisement as well on top of just the health screening, because sometimes people who are trying to get into a healthier lifestyle kind of need an extra push. So I believe, showing them that we are doing a healthy living program, it could have also influenced them to try to come see us at Victory Health also. One improvement that I would make for this health screening would be to get more volunteers at the health screening, which I know can sometimes be hard to do. The health screening only had 2 volunteers and 1 staff member working the booth, and they also had the directors, but they were obviously talking to higher up people. However, I think that it'd be more beneficial to get more community volunteers involved, which might attract more people to the health screening, because I feel like a larger crowd might attract more people's interest. However, overall, I think that it was a really good experience because I got to work in person with some of the individuals in my priority population and was also able to ask some of the questions about their eating habits and health history to help aid in my presentation. And something I learned from asking questions about community members would be how little people really do know about how important it is to eat healthy. A lot of people kind of admitted to not eating healthier and didn't really seem to know the need for eating healthy. So I think it's important to educate people. And I also asked a couple of people about their thoughts on a community garden. And many people didn't really know the idea behind it because even though we do have some community gardens here in the Mobile area, they're not very well known about. And I also feel like they're not utilized to the extent that my intervention is trying to make them. So I do feel like trying to get the word out about that would be better too. And a lot of people, to my surprise, did think that community gardens would be a good idea. And I feel like if there potentially was one available to them, they could use it, and it would probably be able to increase healthy eating and the exercise of individuals, as well as improve mental health and emotional health through social interaction of community members. And then these are some of my references.